Do you really enjoy the flavor of lasagna, but you don't enjoy the amount of time that it takes to prepare it, nor the expense that it takes? Well, if you join me here today, we will make a beautiful lasagna soup that should satisfy all your cravings. We'll start off with about half of a medium onion. No, maybe a little more than half of a medium onion. Let's say one whole small onion, and we're going to just chop it up. And we want it to be fairly well diced, not a rough chop, a little more than that. And we've got that nicely chopped up now. And we're also going to chop up 3 cloves of garlic. And normally I would grate this, but I do want the pieces a little bit bigger today. You don't want to get a big piece of garlic in your mouth, but it's okay if it's a little chunkier for this one. On the stove, I have heating up about maybe a quarter of a cup, about 3 tablespoons of oil in a big pot, the pot that I intend to cook everything in, because this is a 1-pot meal. So I'm going to take the onions over to the stove and we are going to get them started to sweat off. Going to stir this for about 30 seconds or so, and then I am going to add the garlic to the pot. And I'm going to stir that again, and I'm going to keep an eye on this now because we don't want the garlic to burn. Now next to the pot we're going to add I would say not quite a pound. This is 0.470 kilograms. So 2/3 of a pound of, 2/3 of a pound of ground beef. You could use sausage, Italian sausage for this recipe. You could use a mixture of beef or pork. And we're going to put this into the big pot on the stove and get it to browning. This beef that I put in here today was lean ground beef, and that's why I added a bit of extra oil to it, just to make sure that it stays good and moist. And as we cook it, we want to get it to where it's just getting brown, because the brown bits add flavor to the soup. Also, when we put that big bit of meat in there, you could probably tell that the pot cooled off almost right away, and it takes it a little while for the whole pot to come back up to temperature again. It's good that it does that, because if you did it the other way around and you browned the meat first, then there'd be brown bits on the pot that the onions, when you put them in, would stick to. So by doing it this way, we are stopping the onions from getting too brown, because we're putting the cold meat in there just when they're about perfect. So it kind of slows down the cooking process for the onions and allows them to sweat out. Now the next things to go into the pot are some beef broth, and today I have the concentrate beef broth. And I need 1 container of these with 4 cups of water. Now the reason that I'm using these are, rather than the full-size ones, these are so much easier to store in your cupboard. So that might be a good hint for you. You add this and 4 cups of water. And then we have the concentrated flavor right there that we need. Also, to make this go a little quicker today, I'm also going to use, rather than using tomatoes and tomato paste and cooking everything down, I'm going to use a jar of pasta sauce. And you could use whatever your favorite store-bought pasta sauce is, or if you have one that you've made at home, use that. So 2 cups of pasta sauce. I'm just checking to make sure that there isn't too much fat left in the dish, because if there is, then I want to remove some of it at this point. I like to have a couple tablespoons in there, and I think that's about right. If you find it's too much and you find it hard to tip your pot to spoon it out, you can always use a bit of paper towel. Just make sure you don't burn yourself in the process. Or a trick that my mom used to use years ago was just the heel of the bread. If nobody was eating it and it was sitting in the bag, she would use the heel of the bread to sop up any extra fat that might be in dishes that she didn't want them. So now we're going to add the pasta sauce and the beef broth. Now, the pasta sauce I did not make myself. I recanned the pasta sauce from a number 10 can. So if you can, if you have the ability to do that, it certainly is a saver on the old pocketbook. And in goes the beef broth. So that's about 4 and almost 5 cups, I guess, of beef broth, because we reconstituted it. And this is what it's looking like so far. So we are going to let that come to a boil, and then we'll be back to add a few more things to this dish. Now, I did end up adding a can of tomatoes into the mixture because I felt like I wanted some chunks of vegetable in there. I think at this point you could add, maybe a little bit of zucchini or some squash, but I'm trying to keep it more traditionally lasagna flavored. Some of the recipes that you see show the lasagna soup being made, and then at the end it's being finished with a little bit of basil and some ricotta cheese and parmesan cheese that's all been mixed together, and they dollop it on the top of the soup before serving, which is beautiful. But in our house, what would the first thing be that we do with that? We would stir it in. So I'm going to stir it into the recipe as we do, and it'll all be mixed into the recipe when we serve it. So I'll get started on that. Today I didn't have any fresh basil, nor did I find any in the store. So I bought instead a bottle of pesto, and I'm going to add about 2 teaspoons of pesto to the mix. I love the flavor of basil. I'm just going to mix this all up, and as I said before, you could easily just keep this and put it onto the top of your soup in a little dollop as you're serving it, and it would be fantastic. I'm just going to mix it up and we'll stir it in, and it'll work out beautifully. We are at that stage now where we're ready for the lasagna part of the lasagna soup to come into play. So at our local stores, we can pick up these tiny little lasagna noodles. They're just, I hope that focuses for you, just tiny little bits of noodle. They don't appear like they've been broken from anything. They come that way. Or we can also buy the thin lasagna noodles, which I think would be perfect for this dish. I don't have quite enough left in this bag because I made a bigger pot today. So I'm just going to be breaking up some of these noodles to put in the soup. Normally we would use about a handful of pasta for the two of us, not quite this much maybe. But this is a big bunch of soup and I am going to use a full handful. I don't know if that's some sort of an accurate measurement, but that's what we're going to use today. And I'm just going to break them into about inch and a half pieces so that we can have them. You probably hear them hitting the floor because as they're breaking, they're cracking all over the place. You can totally use full-size lasagna sheets for this recipe, but I find then that the sheets are big and you can't get them onto the spoon very easily, so you're always trying to cut the bigger sheet in your bowl. As I said, it would totally work, but if you can find the smaller ones, definitely have a look for them. I'm surprised now at how many stores do carry them. I broke them all up and I've measured them out and I have 2 cups. I have a pile here and this one here. So I'm starting with 2 cups of dried noodles and into the pot they go. I've just stirred the lasagna noodles in, the little broken bits of lasagna. And now I am just stirring it to make sure that things aren't stuck to the bottom of the pot. And I'm going to leave it here to simmer until the noodles are ready to eat. Can you see how much the soup has reduced while the noodles were cooking? I let it continue to boil, not on a full boil, but boil, and it takes these tiny little noodles quite some time. I would say 20 minutes of boiling in order to get them soft, which is just fine, but just to be aware, check the packaging on your noodles that you're going to use and make sure that you have an idea of how long the noodles need to cook. Now, most lasagnas have a bechamel layer in them, and I usually use ricotta cheese or cottage cheese in that layer, and so to bring that flavor in a little more, I'm going to add about ½ a cup of heavy cream, the 33% whipped cream, and I'm going to stir that in. And I've removed it from the stove because we don't want the cream to separate or curdle in any way. So I've taken it from the heat, and now I'm going to add in the parmesan cheese, ricotta cheese, and the basil or the pesto mixture. And I'm just going to stir it all in. And you can see how much it changes the color of the soup. And I can tell you for sure how much it changes the flavor of the soup. Now, let's plate this up and have some lunch. Well, it definitely tastes like lasagna, and I'm really pleased with the result. Today, I'm serving it with a beautiful roll from my quick roll recipe, which I will link in the description box below. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.